And all of a sudden, these guys are all in my house and they set up, and I'm just looking like, whoa. And they start playing. And, I remember like for boom, fast, you know, bebop, man, serious.
On World Cafe, it's Flea with a performance of Morning Cry. It is from his debut solo album, which is available now. It's called Honora. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame bassist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers is my guest. I am Kaleo. It is World Cafe. Flea, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kaleo.
You got it. So this record, wow. I kind of want to start in an unusual place. I want to start with the title, because in some ways to tell the story of this album is to kind of talk about your life, beginning long before you were born with a woman named Honora. Can you tell me about her and why you wanted to name the album after her?
Yeah, certainly. On my father's side of my family, my great-great-grandmother was in Ireland, and she was living in Limerick, and the famine happened there, and her entire family starved to death. I think she was 13, 14 years old or something, and the only survivor. And she ended up in a workhouse after her family died in Limerick. And I think it was a very brutal place to be. A workhouse meant like menial labor all day long. The women were commonly sexually abused and abused in all manner of, horrific ways. And when she was at 15 or 16, in Australia, they had 8 men to 1 woman. And so they were just sending women over there. And so basically, as breeding stock, she was put on a ship in steerage and sent over to Australia. Um, and I recently did the Finding Your Roots show with Henry Louis Gates, who's really such a cool guy. And there she met, they were having a gold rush in Australia at the time, and she met a guy who had just come from Hungary, from our common ancestry, who was there to strike it rich with the gold. And that never happened, but they had a few kids, and he died shortly after from dysentery, which I think was common for unsuccessful miners, like out just, eating garbage and, out in the mines.
Wow.
And she had 3 kids, was living below poverty. And I started, like at the show, they started showing me her arrest records, and she'd been arrested for selling booze in the streets, and, just all this stuff, like just to survive. Like her story, her whole story resonated with me in such a powerful way. It just reduced me to this like bare bones. I was, just to tears thinking about her. And knowing very little of my family history, beyond just my most immediate, my parents and anything, it really felt like it made me know myself. And even though I wasn't consciously thinking, oh, this record is the story of my life, and me like kind of embrace my childhood loves and to bring them to fruition, it was, I think, subconsciously working that this is the story of me and this is who I am. And I love, my life. I'm just trying to go, as I grow, to go deeper and deeper into myself, to try to, like, I think ultimately learn to love myself, because I was raised with some degree of self-loathing, and to learn to love myself, and to love myself, I have to know myself. So I guess it's all part of that journey, and just sitting here talking about it with you, once again, kind of clarifies that for me.
Yeah, I really found doing the research for this interview was eye-opening, because there were so many things that I think I just took for granted about you that I learned in the research of this record. Like, you say being born in Australia, people probably think you went right to Southern California, but you grew up in New York, and your home was filled with live jazz, which I was just so cool. I would love to know what that picture looked like inside your house, where you're, just a type and you got these great players surrounding you.
The way that I remember it is something that affects me so profoundly and really changed my life forever, because before that, music really wasn't a part of my life. My real father was a pretty button-up, briefcase and suit, go to work every day guy. And then my mom left him and took up with this jazz musician. And we, he started having musicians come over the house. And it was the 60s in New York, the New York jazz scene. And these guys would come over and set up and just start playing bebop like ferociously with a vengeance, with a revolutionary spirit and an intensity. And they were studied and their lives were dedicated to this very sophisticated art form that works, physically and viscerally and intellectually, cerebrally, and spiritually and emotionally. It's a very holistic, intense thing. And as a little boy, I remember like they come over, and also my life had been very white to that point. And on his viewpoint,
Ah,
there was black culture, black American culture of the time. And all of a sudden, these guys are all in my house, and they set up, and I'm just looking like, whoa. And they start playing, and I remember like for boom, fast, you know, bebop, man, serious. And I remember just falling on the floor. I remember this so intensely and just rolling around on the floor and seeing colors and looking up and seeing them blowing and hitting and plucking and going for it. And they're just making it up as it goes, but
man.
communicating in this really high level way like jazz musicians do. And it changed my life forever. And to this day, it's the high bar that was raised that I'm reaching for. And, obviously, I wanted to be, and I was a wild kid. I was a street kid. I was getting in all kinds of trouble. And my discipline wasn't very good. I didn't really have the structure, the discipline. And then when I was in high school, I got in a rock band and started playing bass. But this stuff was always guiding me. And now, like, with this new record that I made, it's me coming back to like what that really serious study of that music and wanting to reach a place that gave so much to me and has continued to give so much to me through my life.
Yeah. We're talking with Flea here on World Cafe. His debut solo album is called Honora. So your first instrument was the trumpet.
Yeah, well, I did, spend formative years with it, but I was just very, you know, if I practiced, it was a good day. I mean,
Totally.
I I was wild. I was a kid, and like I got out of school, and I started smoking weed when I was 11. I was running around in the street, hustling and moving, so I was just kind of a wild kid in the street, getting into stuff. But at the same time, like the trumpet was a sanctuary for me. And the times that I did spend with it, I knew, even though I wasn't studying and learning the academic part of music, I knew what beautiful was because I had seen it and heard it and felt it. So whenever I had it in my hands and I was playing, I was yearning for something beautiful. And it kind of was something that calmed the chaos in the world for me and gave me, I made me know that there was a light to follow, that there was a light to follow and a beacon and something for me to do. So it was always kind of like that. And then when I got into high school and my friends had a rock band and asked me to start playing bass, I put it down for basically until like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Occasionally picking it up over the last 40 years, but really not very much or studiously. And then like 3 years ago, so I made a decision to pick it up and play it every day, no matter what, and study as hard as I could to get as good as I could.
I think you said something to the effect of, 30 years ago, you set out to do this. I want to make a jazz album. I think it was like the early 90s. I want to make a trumpet record.
Mm.
Why was the time now? Because obviously, I know you've been busy, but you sort of seem to force this to happen despite all of the things that you have going on as a parent and a band member and all those things. Tell me about the reason to do that.
Honestly, like I think, my wife, Melody, she's a very hardworking woman. And I think being with her is the first time in my life that I was able to forgive me. I'm an emotional person, forgive me.
You're all good.
Have
Take your
that,
time.
yeah, just have that feeling of stability at home with someone who really understood that my work was important to me and to be supportive to me. Like oftentimes in the past, like, it's to be fun that I'm a rock star and successful in music and stuff, but then the day to day actually like, no, I'm practicing. No, I'm doing this, like I'm working. It's like she really been very supportive with me in that way. And I think also just as I grow and mature, like what my life's mission on this earth is became very clear to me. And I just really wanted to like crystallize my life away from distractions and just into doing work, the love of my family, nurturing this stuff that's so important and eliminate all the distractions. And then when Kamasi Washington put out his record, The Epic, it really affected me, that album. Like it made me feel the feelings that I had when I was a kid that I hadn't had in a while. Like jazz, not as an academic exercise of a display of virtuoso brilliance, which it is and has been, like, these very studied people playing this music that has evolved and great. But it made me feel the feeling of the street, the revolutionary aspect of the music, the spirit of it. Like it made me want to, yes, I'm alive. I feel it. My body is tingling. My organs are dancing a jig. And that really affected me. And then just like this kind of whole jazz scene and meeting Kamasi and Thundercat and seeing all these great musicians around LA play, really touching to me. And then I just started thinking like I want to play my trumpet again. And it was just like, yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, I wanted to do it. And I had met on a number of occasions Kamasi's father, Ricky,
Ricky, yeah.
who's a great musician in his own right and a great teacher and had taught Kamasi and Thundercat and Terrace Martin and a lot of these guys from the LA jazz scene when they were younger. And I really wanted to get good. And I called Ricky and asked him if he would consider teaching me. And he said yes. And so just going to his house and sitting with him in his room and him passing down this knowledge to me and teaching me and um, humbling myself to this awesome music and being a student is so gives me everything. Trying to learn something and get good at something that I'm not good at. I'm jump out of bed, down on my knees. I'm saying my prayers. I'm eating my breakfast. I'm kissing my family, and I'm going to work.
It's World Cafe, and we are talking with Flea, the bassist of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. His debut solo album is a jazz record called Honora. We've got more with Flea's path to his solo album, but up first, a bit of the song A Plea.
Well, he said boo, and she said hooray. Now we're human beings right here. Human beings. We're here together. Come on. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when it falls on you? You're scaring a kid. The beautiful kid. Ah, yeah, they want to know. One of the things that I wanted to do and really wanted the musicians that I played with, which incidentally, having Josh Johnson partnering with me and producing my record and Jeff Parker, DeAnthony Parks, Anna
Butters, yeah.
uh, you know, uh, uh, Nate Walcott, Mauro Rafosco, like, I mean, and I'm forgetting everybody, all the musicians that played on it were such a huge part of it, but not specifically. I don't feel like I can answer that question and say that. I like my playing on the record, but I wanted everybody to play with restraint to, I feel like, and specifically wanted those musicians because they're so good at playing with restraint. Like nobody wants to show off everybody. I just wanted to honor the music and I feel good about all of it. Like I feel like we really connected and worked towards a common goal in a really loving and communicative way. Being in a room with everybody playing it felt beautiful. And it's just, I guess it was I was ready to fail too, making this music. Like I didn't even know what I was going to do with it. Like I just knew I wanted to go and make it and see what happened. And I was sort of worried about it. And then I read this great Neil Young quote. And, Neil Young is someone throughout my adult years has been a real inspiration to me. Everything that he does, I just, I love him. And I'm such a fan of all the aspects of all the levels of it. And he was talking about, I don't remember the specific quote, but basically like to do anything good, you have to embrace failure. Like he goes, I'll make a whole record that it didn't come out, but I needed to express that and put it out and then go on to the next thing. Like you gotta, like failing is good
Yeah.
because not everything's destined to be perfect, you know, and you have to just express where you are. And that really resonated with me to the point I was like, I don't care if I fail, great. You know what I mean? I'm going to go in and just do this thing. And that was so freeing that it made me really trust myself that like maybe myself fails right now, but myself needs to do this because it's who I am. And that was such a human and affirming feeling. And but you know, as soon as we got in the studio and we started playing the music, and I was looking at DeAnthony and Jeff and Josh and Anna and you know everybody and jamming with them. Um, I was like, if this is failure, give it to me because this feels so good. It just felt, you know, like it was a euphoric, dreamlike feeling playing with them and had me in a just this kind of flirtatious feeling of connection and love and
Oh, that's
beauty.
so beautiful. This is World Cafe. We're talking with Flea about his debut solo album called Honora. We've already played some original music, but I want to talk about one of the covers on the album, this beautiful rendition of Frank Ocean's Thinking About You. Why did you pick that one?
You know, you know why it's just a great song, and you know, in the jazz tradition, you
That's all
know,
you need.
yeah, musicians, you know, throughout history, they cover great songs, and I don't know, call it a pop song, an R&B song, R&B song, a song, whatever. It's a great
Classic.
song, and it was a record when it came out, when Channel Orange came out. Um, you know, I think I just heard about it and got it, and it really blew me away. It was one of those records like I listened to it every day for months because it affected me. And when I started thinking about making a trumpet record, which is what, even though it became a lot more than a trumpet record, but that was my plan, was just to play trumpet all over a record.
Mm-hmm.
Play, you know, and I started making demos at home and just playing bass, keyboards, drum machine, trumpet. And that was the very first song I did, recorded at home. I made a demo of it and I just liked it. And it was felt very organic and natural. So it was just with me. And uh, yeah, that's it, simple.
Cover of Frank Ocean's Thinking About You. It's Flea on World Cafe. His debut album is called Honora. You mentioned something about how your initial design was going to be to be a trumpet record. You were just going to play all over it. But I think it might have been Josh Johnson who tried to steer you in a different direction, saying ultimately you could make a cooler record by going a different way. Can you kind of unpack that for me?
Yeah, Josh was really influential. And that's probably, you know, he was really about like, yeah, play the trumpet, but it, it doesn't have to be like it's going to be more effective if you blow sparingly anyway, you know, blowing meaning playing trumpet. And he just was always, you know, he's great, Josh. And you know, I recommend he's such a good producer. But yeah, no, he really was like, let's just serve the song here. Like,
Yeah.
let's honor the song. And because I was ready to make a free jazz record and just blah, you know what I mean? Like, and I would have been happy with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but when we got it, and also he was like, let's just let it grow the way it grows, you know? And 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 when we got it, yeah, so yeah, he just was like, let's just make beautiful songs
Yeah.
and let's let them grow in the way that they grow. And because you know, I would have been, you know, kind of stricter about it. But left to my own devices, I would have made a really weird free jazz record, I
Sure,
think.
sure.
And so he, you know, he encouraged me to really honor these songs and to like that. And yeah, it just happened how it happened. I mean, when we got, you know, you get together with someone in a room and I love collaborating with him and he's such a smart, thoughtful person, that it was just sort of the nature of the conversation led to what we did. Yeah, and he was definitely a huge influence on me.
Well, and I think it comes back to the part that you were talking about. You seeked out musicians who could be great jazz players who played with restraint. So I guess there is some beautiful symmetry in that restraint comes back as a lesson to you from those musicians.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I remember like early on thinking, like someone telling me, like, well, how do you want to do it? Just get some monsters, some jazz monsters to play. And in my head, I was like, I don't want a bunch of guys like being monsters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they meant like some guys like, being incredible, you know what I mean? Blamming away and like I want to be like, burp, burp, you know what I mean? Like blasting away virtuosos, like, yeah, there's a place for it, but it really like I was just made me repel. Like, no, I don't want that. You know what I
Right.
mean? I want great musicians, but I want, calm and beauty and so much of the stuff that I was composing and thinking of was calm and beautiful. It, to me was like had this like melancholy, dreamy quality to it.
Flea is my guest today on World Cafe. We've been talking about and listening to songs from his debut solo album, Honora. When I saw the track listing for the record and I saw that Nick Cave was featured on Wichita Lineman, it just put a huge smile on my face. Very brief context for our audience. 25 years ago, he made an unkind comment about your band, and you responded to those comments with a lot of grace and humility and kindness. And I guess that opened the door to this strange collaboration. Can you tell me a little bit
It's
about your relationship
Yeah.
these days?
Well, there are two key elements to the collaboration. The first one being that, well, yeah, he said something, and I guess, his kids were blasting the Chili Peppers in the house all day long. And he was like, "What is this garbage? Turn it off," And and uh and it's funny to me, but it's funny because when I look back at that time, it wasn't his comment that pissed me off. Like I get it. Like in one way, I don't care. I don't care whether someone likes us or not.
Right.
I just love Nick Cave, and I always have. Like I'm a huge Nick Cave fan, and yeah, I would have liked it better if he was like, "Oh, they're soulful geniuses," you know what I mean? But it was more like it was the journalist that pissed me off because I could tell the journalist wrote with such glee about that the great Nick Cave said that we're terrible, that it was kind of like like don't use that against us. You know what I mean? Like the journalist was wanting to put us
There's
down. You know what
ammo
I,
from Nick Cave saying that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? And so when I responded, it was kind of more, at the time I was writing like a blog on the Red Hot Chili Peppers website. And so I was just writing about whatever I was feeling that day. And I thought was like, and my comment was, I'm not gonna let some journalist with my love for Nick Cave
Yeah.
because I love Nick Cave. I love the birthday party. I love the Bad Seeds. I love those records. They are very meaningful pieces of art to me that make me feel less alone in the world. And you can't mess with that or corrupt my relationship to this. You know what I mean? And and so anyways, I guess, Nick liked that. And so that was one thing. And I think, Nick had expressed to me that, he didn't feel good about it. And and then I have a very close dear friend named Thomas Housego, uh, who's an artist, a sculptor, and a painter, and maybe my best friend on this planet. And he's close with Nick, so he kind of was a real good conduit between Nick and I having a friendship. And I still don't know Nick really well, but as time goes by, we know each other better. And and when I recorded the song Wichita Lineman, I had no concept of him singing on it or anyone singing on it. I just wanted to do it and play trumpet on it, which I had done, and I felt very happy with it. Like it sounded beautiful.
As an instrumental.
Yeah, as an instrumental. And I was just listening to it like in the studio, we went out and tracked it, one take, listening to it, like, oh man, that sounds good. And then it was kind of like, and it sounded like it had this real melancholy feeling of it, and I'd never considered it. And then it was sort of like ringing in my head, Nick telling me that he really loved Jimmy Webb, and also writing about Jimmy Webb in the Carnage book, that I loved, a great book, that he loved Jimmy Webb, who composed Wichita Lineman. And I was like, damn, maybe Nick would want to sing on it. And like, and mentioned it to Josh, and he was like, wow, that'd be great. And that night, came home from the studio, sent Nick the track. He responded like a half hour later, like, yes, I'm leaving on tour in 2 days, but let me try to get in the studio and knock this out.
What's it like to have your hero play on a record like this?
It's really nice, to collaborate with, someone who I admire, whenever I've had the opportunity to do that or continue to do it. Like I admire the people in the Chili Peppers. Like I admire people, and
Sure.
him, someone, yeah, who I admired from afar and been listening to for so long. And he's such a commanding presence and a soulful person. It just felt great. Like it felt so generous
Wow.
and selfless and giving. And he really bled all over the tape, and speaking with him afterwards, like, I sent him the music and he's in the UK and recorded it. And then like right after he did it, he sent it. We, got on a FaceTime and or Zoom or whatever. And he was he was all, emotionally moved by the experience. So I could tell we all were,
Wow.
and it was just really nice, a feeling of togetherness, um, and, building those connections is, that's what life's all about.
It really sounds like it profoundly affected you in the best way possible. And you've made a really, really beautiful record. I think we can wrap it here. We're going to go out on Wichita Lineman featuring Nick Cave. My guest today has been Flea. His debut solo album is called Honora. Flea, it was an absolute pleasure. Congrats on everything. And we hope to speak to you again soon.
Kaleo, dude, thanks for caring and having me on. I'm grateful. Thank you.
The wire. I can hear you through the wine and the Wichita lineman is still old.